So, third and last day at Tomorrow Mobility World Congress, and hello again. And now you can see that even if I'm super tired after 3 days of intense activity, I'm very, very happy and excited of having now Marco Te Brömmelstroet. I have to say the truth, I've been rehearsing his surname very much over the last 30 minutes because as a Spanish, I'm not a very good pronouncer of his surname.
It was really good.
Marco, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for allowing me to be here.
The reason why I'm super excited is because we are now announcing his new book, Movement, How to Take Back the Streets and Transform Lives with Marco. Marco, this is the result of a lot of research, no? So tell us more.
Well, actually, it's the direct result of a very uncomfortable conversation I had with a journalist. Because she came to my office to talk about cycling infrastructure and how we could save the world by getting people out of cars and on bike highways, and if we could then have showers at work so we can then go faster to work. And instead of giving my sort of one-liners to her to put in her article, I instead asked her all kinds of questions, like why do you think this is a problem? Why do you think we should solve congestion? Why do cyclists have to go fast? Why are you thinking all of this? And she was really annoyed, like really, really annoyed by me. But she was also triggered and thought, well, there is something here that sort of triggers me because these questions I've never asked, and maybe I should ask them. So that's where the book starts. The book starts by you're being sucked into that specific bad interview. And then from there, we together with Talia Verkade, who's the journalist, we sort of fall into a rabbit hole and we start asking more and more and more questions. And in the end, the question really becomes, like, to whom do our streets belong? And why are we not asking that question much more often? So that's what the book tries to cover. It doesn't, in the end, give an answer, but I hope that it will make the readers aware that we should ask more questions about our public space and our streets and how they are designed and why that matters.
Okay, two things here. I really hope that this interview is not ending the way the other was, or otherwise we will be presenting the next book next year here in Tomorrow Mobility. Who knows?
Well, in general, I'm a social scientist, right? So I actually think that one of the things that I hope to do with the book, and in general, is that we also should ourselves. We want answers all the time, right? We want to optimize something. So just tell us, if it's not about travel speed, what should we optimize, and then we do that. And I think one of the things that I try to do is to create a bit more confusion around that, and I really hope that I make people more confused, not less confused, because I think if we're more confused, we ask much better questions. So don't come to me for the answers, but I will try to help you ask better questions.
The main thing right now is that we are immersed in a lot of debate, discussion, but on top of that, climate emergency and energy crisis. So if we are going and moving forwards to shape more sustainable urban mobility, what are the main consequences of energy crisis and climate emergency in this shaping process?
Well, first of all, I like to unpack the words. Like, what does sustainable mean? Sustainable means basically we want mobility to be sustained, to keep on being as it is. And I think that's the first thing we need to unpack. Because I don't want mobility as it is to sustain. I actually want it to be unsustainable. I want it to stop for many reasons, but partly because it follows the same model basically as capitalism. Mobility is very much connected to economic growth, to make people move faster, and the only way to make that work is to externalize the costs of that on other parts of society. So now we're running into the problems with climate, and now we're running into problems of energy. But we will keep running into problems if we do not face this underlying fundamental fact that mobility as it is can only sustain if we externalize its negative impacts. Okay, so if that's the position, my argument would be we don't need sustainable mobility, we need meaningful mobility. We need mobility that is not about getting faster from A to B. We need mobility that makes it more meaningful to use the streets, to meet people in public space. We need to start talking different narratives. So the current mobility system, if you ask me, please be unsustainable. Stop existing, because I don't want it. I don't want to live in this machine. And I've seen all these sparks, like I'm here in Barcelona. And this morning I visited a bici bus. So I joined children enjoying themselves, going to school. That is what we want. But for that to be able to exist, the mobility system as it is needs to be unsustainable. It needs to be out of the way so that we can rethink how we want to use our public spaces.
Yeah, and basically in this rethinking process, we have to put a key word in this, which is policy. So basically in your book, you defend that the policy has gone into the wrong direction over the last decades. So in your opinion, what should be the lines that policy should follow to be in the right path?
Yeah, and again, I will not give answers to that. So I think one of the key things that we also discussed here is that you can discuss policies if they're wrong or right. You can get political parties to have debates about that. But I think the key problem is that we forgot that traffic is about policy making. It is about visions. It is about being deeply politically in debate with each other. So instead of that, we created an image with traffic engineering that our streets are sort of an optimization issue that we can give to experts. So already the notion that it should be political, I think, would be a key stepping stone towards a better future, because then we can become more, we can disagree more about what good mobility is. And currently we are forgetting that we can actually think about it. We're forgetting that as a citizen you can actually ask something from that street, because most citizens take for granted that the street is designed as it is, and they take for granted that they have to push a button to cross the street. But that's not a taken for granted thing. You can actually, it needs to become more deeply political. And then I don't really care what political positions there are, as long as there are political positions.
Basically, these are two of the main things you defend in your book, is that streets are not for the road, for the cars, and also that citizens play a key role, so that they have to change the behavior. And that's precisely what you were saying. They have to change the way they understand mobility in their cities, so that they don't have to push a button. So how do you envisage that change in the mindset of the citizens could happen? What is needed for that?
Imagine, yeah. So what's needed for that is, well, first of all, this realization that we are taking things for granted, we shouldn't take for granted. Basically, that's also what happened with the journalist in the book. She starts to become aware of all these things that we take for granted, that congestion is a problem. We take for granted that travel time savings are worthwhile to invest in. But what if we don't? What if we stop doing that? So that's very important. I think what's important is indeed the imagination. We can no longer, our imagination is solidified, it's stuck. If we can think about our streets, and then we can only think about our streets with less cars, like car-free streets, or we can think about cars moving, but then not 50 but 30. That's what we can do. But it's very hard for us to rethink the street and see it as a space for green, as a space for water, as a space for social cohesion. So the imagination is required for that. So we need, first of all, we need people, we need artists, we need people that are able to show us the imagination. We need to unlock the imagination in ourselves, and we need to actively start making things. Like again, I refer here to the BC bus in Barcelona. People see children smiling and going to school together. They can never unsee that. They can never unsee it. And now you have unlocked their imagination, because now suddenly they think, oh, wait a minute, why are our streets not always for our children? So we need to start making change. We need to use different narratives to do radical things on the streets, to test them out, superblock style, tactical urbanism, but then also use new language around them. So don't only do an experiment and then see if the cars go around or not, but also count the amount of smiles. Count how many children actually are back in public space, right? So it's a combination of all of those things. But we can do it. That's one of the coolest things. If there's one thing that humans are good at, it's imagination and developing new ideas. But then we shouldn't be here with 20,000 people talking about smart mobility as if it is about gadgets and optimization. We need to unlock it.
Basically what you were saying, we can do it, and there is a lot of imagination. Imagination was the thing that all the people replying to our post on social media last week were presenting a lot of questions, because they were really excited with the idea of having Marco here in Barcelona. So we selected a few questions. So you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, first one. One of them was saying, I'd love to travel by bike in my city, but I'm scared of the traffic, which is in line with what you were saying, taking the streets back to ourselves.
Well, first of all, I think the whole notion that people are afraid on public space is a complete unacceptable notion. We have recently we have seen for the first time we measured that in Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, right, the city of bikes, 2 in 3 people, so 66% of all people, adult people, are afraid in traffic. So 2 in 3 people are scared as soon as they leave their door, because basically then you enter traffic space. That's unacceptable. So we need, that also shows again that we need to take those things much more central, and we need to make it political and say, hey, aldermen of mobility, stop optimizing travel time and start making streets where people do not have to be afraid. And not only on the bike, but in general. Why should we allow a society where my child of 4 gets taught at school that the street is so dangerous that he's not allowed to play there? He's not allowed to take his ball under his arm to school because it's dangerous there. That's unacceptable. So let's make it unacceptable and demand that our streets are safe for children, for people who want to bike, for anybody. And we also know how to do it, right? It's not rocket science. We need to take out speed. We need to take out mass. We should stop talking about behavioral campaigns. We should just accept that people make mistakes, and we should not give them tools that make those mistakes into a lethal hazard for other people.
So basically you were mentioning a few times the word unacceptable. So this linked to the second question, which is what separates acceptable infrastructure from cycling from excellent? So what's still to be done in order to make cities safer for everyone, but also for the cyclists, that sometimes are also at stake and at risk due to the policies and the way the cities are shaped?
I would say also as a Dutchman, I'm proud of the excellent bicycle infrastructure of the Netherlands. So please, if you're interested in this, go there, call the Dutch Cycling Embassy, think about it. But, there's a big but. Because when we started to talk about cycling in the Netherlands in the 1970s, it wasn't about perfect bicycle infrastructure. It was about seeing the bicycle as a symbol for different society. Seeing the bicycle as a symbol basically to take back the streets from traffic engineers and say, hey, what if the streets are actually places where humanity can thrive? That was at stake. That was why John Lennon and Yoko Ono were in bed with a bicycle, spoiler, right? It wasn't because they wanted perfect cycling infrastructure to solve congestion. So although the Dutch bicycle infrastructure is sort of the perfect thing to do, it is the perfect thing to do within traffic engineering where cars still dominate. But never forget that. 27% of trips in the Netherlands are by bike. 73% are not. And this is what you can achieve, which is great. But if you really want to have excellent, perfect cities, we should embrace the bicycle as a symbol for streets where traffic engineering is no longer the dominant narrative. It can be much more about seeing streets as public space, where bicycles play a role. But I really think that one of the things I've been seeing here, imagine that if you propose a tactical urbanism superblock intervention in the Netherlands, one of the biggest oppositions you will find is the cyclist union, right? For good reasons, because they're fighting for throughput and high quality bicycle provision. But that also interferes with quality of greenery, with sometimes you want to just reclaim the streets for children to play. So again, this shows that this quest for perfect infrastructure is a limited way of understanding how the bicycle can lead to perfect streets or better cities or thriving societies.
So I think that one of the main challenges here is basically make a city for all and not for different sectors and different groups, which is linked to the next question, because I think that our audience thinks that Marco is super focused on cycling, but it's not only about that. He's an expert on how to reshape cities for all and how to think cities for making use of that forever and for the citizen who is in the end for what they were created. Next question. How can cities invest more in cycling infrastructure and fund projects in this regard?
Yeah, so again, I would say less please, less cycling infrastructure and use the funding to think about. So one thing that I really am in my brain already for a while is that it all falls or starts with the way that we make financial decisions for those funds, right? And now in the Netherlands we found out that you can have a very good argument to use mobility funds to make bicycle highways. So this week we've heard that the Dutch government is, for this reason, investing 1 billion euros in cycling infrastructure of a total fund of 7.5 billion. It's a lot of money. But it's still about bicycle highways going fast from A to B with your bike. So I really think that to answer this question, we first need to rethink how we are assessing where to fund in. And as long as it's the same traffic engineer-based models, the same cost-benefit analysis that we always use, we will rebuild the same cities with the same logic, but then around the bicycle. And I really think that this is not what we want. I really think we want something else, and that then we have to first start with using different assessment tools. And one thing that I recently learned about was the well-being index. And 4 countries in the world are already using that logic, where they say our money needs to be invested in projects that do not improve welfare, not improve GDP growth, but improve well-being. And suddenly the bicycle will become huge, because what does the bicycle do? It makes society more just. It will give more people the opportunity to escape traffic or transport poverty. So the bicycle will do well in that, but I would really argue, as an answer to this question, first thing we need to do is we need to break down the existing assessment strategies, replace them with better ones, and then think about how to invest in bicycle infrastructure.
Okay, we're going to move now from cycling to another sector of urban mobility. Mobility as a service. So the next question from our audience was, what role do you think that mobility as a service will play in the next 10 years?
Think backwards. I think, what society do you want in 10 years? And how is mobility as a service leading towards that? Mobility as a service is using language in a way that hides the underlying rationale. Because basically, if you look around, what it actually is mobility as a consumer product, where you rent your mobility from a company. So it's a consumption service. Mobility as a consumption service. So it makes mobility into something that needs to be seamless, like other parts of our lives, where we are thriving for making everything as easy as possible through a company and through an app. But it also means that we give away a lot of our autonomy. We become dependent on, now not on our governments, but now on international companies to cater for our needs. So what happens if they fall away? As we currently see a lot happening with e-scooters and e-mopeds in the Netherlands, where companies just go bankrupt and fall away. So your entire mobility system suddenly is gone. So if you want a society that's not more and more dependent on companies, but more and more able to be self-reliant as society, I would argue let's develop the idea of mobility as a commons. So not mass, but maak. And mobility as a commons can teach us to use the same technologies, but to actually share and own the vehicles and the mobility ourselves. And to become aware that actually mobility is something we all should adopt, which is sort of a common, a thing that we all share. And this will lead to a society where ideally we become much more able to, instead of being this individual consumer, we become more aware that we are citizens, we need to take care of each other, we need to support each other, we need to be able to fix our own stuff. So it will, I think in the end, will make us better humans. So mobility as a service has this, it's better than what we have, but it's suboptimal in terms of what kind of society we can be. Is that too negative?
It's not.
No, I hope it's often seen as spoiling the party of mobility as a service. But I really think that we can use the same technology and do better. And that's what we try to do also in Amsterdam with our Lab of Thought, is to think about innovations, not to be against them, but to rethink them, to deconstruct their underlying narratives, to make them better, to make them fitting more with the narratives that support society that we want.
I would keep 2 key points of your last answer. He was mentioning we as citizens, we have a role, and then the dependence on companies. So basically, I'm a strong believer in that any one of us individually can change the course of history if we can play a role. So if you could tell every single citizen who's seen this interview, what could you say that we could, media as well, what could I do individually to change the course of history in urban mobility and make it more unsustainable?
Yeah, it's a bit of a spoiler because it's the end of the book. So in the end of the book, we give sort of a list of things you can do as a citizen. And first of all, be a citizen. Don't take things for granted on your streets. Make them political. Go out there. Talk with your neighbors. Ask them what kind of street they want. So behave more like a citizen. About seeing the street more as something of a public space, something you own. It's not something out there. It's something you own. It should serve you. And you should become aware of that. And then, of course, you can, if you want, you can send the book to your political representative and ask them to become more political, to talk more about what is their vision of society, to stop hiding behind technocratic models and just be clearer about what kind of city you want to be and how mobility plays a role in that. And then I really think just go out there, enjoy dancing with this, do positive things. That's again, I'm so happy that today I was finally experiencing the BC bus, because it's just bringing your child to school can become part of change. You can group together with other parents and just say, hey, can we please allow our children to go to school and enjoy themselves? That's the only thing we ask. And then if you ask such a small thing and it's so positive, it leads to such radical change. I'm getting goosebumps if I think about it, right? It's because all the children that were there, the music that was there, the fun, nobody can unsee it. Once you've seen it, nobody can unsee it. And that's, I think, the power of individual change.
Basically, you linked with the motto of this conference, what moves you. So let's make that this moves us all to make the cities more livable for everyone. Marco Te Brömmelstroet, it was a pleasure to have you here.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
And if you didn't get it yet, you have now the opportunity to run to your libraries and learn how you can contribute to change the way cities are shaped. Marco, thanks.
Thanks.